My relationship with my father growing up was a tough one. And so I hate retelling the true story that I grew up on 51st Street in Los Angeles, and he was on 36th Street, and we hardly saw one another. That he made promise after promise after promise that he'd come and pick me up or he'd come see me, and most of the time he didn't show. But when he did show, within a couple of hours, he would be drunk and somebody else would have to take me home. Thankfully, I had other examples to help fill in those gaps. My grandfather, my uncles, coaches, life mentors later. But that void of having your dad present is very real for me, very real. And so I commit my entire life to being present for my kids. The reconciliation story between me and my dad was a little bit dramatic in that I received a phone call from an aunt in California, and she said, "I need you to be sitting down." And I just knew, just based on her tone, that she was going to tell me that my father had died. But instead, she was surprising me with something miraculous had happened, and that was that my dad had checked himself into rehab. I remember, though, the first thought that came to my mind was, why now? Why now that I'm a grown man with my own family, would you decide to go and do something about your problem? Where were you when I was 13? Why wouldn't you make that sacrifice to die to yourself when I needed you most? But I was still thinking through my lens. I didn't recognize, everything that had happened and had been going on in his life. And I really wasn't looking forward to the opportunities that were ahead of us, that the next 5 years with him committed to being sober and him reaching out to me, him making phone calls that, quite honestly, the first couple phone calls, I didn't know what to think because he had been so distant in my life. So when he started saying that he wanted to come to North Carolina and see me and to meet my wife and to meet the family, I'm thinking, one side, I really want to meet you. I really want you to meet them. The other side, I don't want you near them. But we had to make that faith call. But that summer, about 6 years ago, my dad, whom I hadn't really seen since my wedding, and before that I'd barely seen for another 10 years. My grandfather, who I'd never met before, and my uncle, who I'd never met before, and his son, my cousin, who I'd never met before, and their wives and little cousins coming to my house and us having a big cookout and meeting together and spending time together for the whole weekend. I remember I was doing the manly thing, right? I was outside grilling. So I got to, hey, I'm gonna go check on the meat. And I go outside and I just bawled my eyes out because I had no idea what to do with this emotionally. And that moment when we were all together then was the starting point for the next few years after that. Me talking to my dad regularly. Every conversation moved from an apology to just a regular relationship. One in which I could share what was going on and he could share what was going on with him, and he could get on the phone and talk to his grandchildren, and it'd be special and it'd be real. So when his health did decline and he did pass recently, it really felt like we were whole. I was whole with God, I was whole with him, and there weren't regrets there anymore.